When I moved into my new home, everything seemed perfect. The house was cozy, the neighbors friendly, or so I thought. It wasn't until I started noticing strange things about the couple next door that I realized how wrong first impressions can be. At first glance, the neighborhood was idyllic: manicured lawns, cheerful mailboxes, kids riding bikes down the street. But beyond the facade of normalcy, something darker lurked, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. At first, the neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Grayson, seemed harmless. They were polite, always waving hello, always asking if I needed help adjusting to the area. But something about their demeanor felt off. Their smiles never reached their eyes, and their house always seemed unnaturally quiet. Then came the sounds. Late at night, I'd hear footsteps pacing back and forth in their backyard. Sometimes, faint whispers drifted through the trees, too soft to make out but loud enough to keep me awake. I tried convincing myself it was nothing, just the wind or an overactive imagination, but deep down, I knew better. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. I peeked through the fence dividing our yards and saw Mrs. Grayson standing motionless in the middle of their garden. She held something small and wriggling in her hands, a bird, perhaps, or a squirrel, but what struck me most was her expression. Blank. Unblinking. As though she weren't fully present. When she turned her head slightly, I ducked down, heart racing. Had she seen me? I didn't stick around to find out. Instead, I retreated to my house, locking every door and window, trying to shake the image from my mind. The next morning, I found scratches on the side of my house. Words carved into the wood: "You shouldn't have looked." Panic set in. I called the police, but when they arrived, the Graysons acted completely normal. They denied hearing any unusual noises and insisted they hadn't left their property all night. The officers dismissed my concerns, chalking it up to stress or overactive imagination. But I knew better. Those words were meant for me, and they weren't written by human hands. I haven't seen the Graysons since, not directly, anyway. But sometimes, late at night, I hear knocking on my wall. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Like they're reminding me they're still watching. Whether it's real or just paranoia, I don't know. All I know is, I'll never feel safe in this house again. And now, whenever I pass their property, I swear I see faces pressed against the windows, staring back at me. Faces that shouldn't exist.
Moving to a new town was supposed to be a fresh start for me and my daughter. We picked a quiet neighborhood where everyone seemed friendly. At least, that's what we thought. But not everyone has good intentions. Not everyone is who they seem to be. The trouble started with a man across the street. He introduced himself as Mr. Carter, a reclusive handyman who kept mostly to himself. At first, he seemed harmless, always offering to fix things around the neighborhood, always smiling politely. But his gaze lingered too long, his questions probed too deeply. And then there were the gifts. Every few days, he'd leave something on our doorstep, a tool, a book, even a stuffed animal from my daughter. Each item was wrapped in brown paper tied with string, and each note read simply, "For you." At first, I thought it was kind of him, maybe even sweet. But as the weeks went on, the gifts grew stranger. Tools with worn handles, books filled with blank pages, toys that seemed decades old. Things escalated quickly. One night, I woke up to tapping on my bedroom window. Thinking it was a tree branch, I ignored it until I heard footsteps circling the house. Peering through the blinds, I saw Mr. Carter standing motionless in my backyard, staring up at me. His face was pale, his lips curled into an unnatural grin. Before I could react, he vanished into the shadows. I called the police, but when they questioned him, he claimed he'd been asleep all night. They laughed it off, saying I must have mistaken someone else for him. But I knew what I saw, and worse, I knew he wasn't done with us. After that night, Strange things began happening inside our house. Doors would open and close on their own. Toys belonging to my daughter would go missing, only to reappear in places I couldn't explain. Once, I caught her talking to someone in her room, someone who wasn't there. She said his name was Mr. Carter, and he told her secrets about people in the neighborhood, secrets she couldn't possibly know. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her. Whatever Mr. Carter wanted, it involved my daughter. We tried moving, but wherever we went, he followed. Or maybe he was already there, waiting. To this day, I don't know what Mr. Carter wanted, or why he chose us. But one thing is certain. Some neighbors aren't meant to be trusted, and some doors, once open, can never be closed again.
When I bought my dream house on Elm Street, everything seemed too good to be true. The previous owners had kept it in pristine condition, the neighbors were warm and welcoming, and the community felt like something out of a postcard. But as the weeks went by, I began to notice cracks in the facade, cracks that ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. It started with the family down the block, the Millers. They were the epitome of suburban perfection, 2 parents, 3 kids, always smiling, always polite. But there was something off about them. Their smiles never wavered, not even when their youngest child fell off his bike and scraped his knee. Instead of rushing to comfort him, they simply stood there, watching silently as he cried. It wasn't until later that I realized why. None of them reacted because none of them cared, not in the way normal people do. At first, I dismissed it as my imagination. Maybe they were just private people, uncomfortable showing emotions in public. But then came the sounds. Late at night, I'd hear muffled voices coming from their backyard. Not conversations, more like chanting, rhythmic and hypnotic. Sometimes, I'd catch glimpses of flickering lights through their windows, though no cars ever pulled into their driveway after dark. And then there were the smells, sharp, acrid odors wafting over the fence, like burning plastic or singed hair. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. I crept into their backyard, trying to stay hidden behind the bushes. That's when I saw it, a circle of candles arranged in the center of their lawn, surrounded by strange symbols carved into the dirt. The entire family stood around it, holding hands and swaying back and forth. Their eyes were closed, their mouths moving in unison, reciting words I couldn't understand. As I watched, frozen in place, Mrs. Miller opened her eyes and stared directly at me. Her gaze was empty, yet piercing, as if she knew exactly where I was hiding. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, and ran home as fast as I could. For days afterward, I avoided looking out my windows, terrified they'd come for me. But avoidance didn't help. Strange things began happening in my own house. Doors would slam shut on their own. Shadows moved across walls where no one stood. Once, I woke up to find a small wooden carving of a face sitting on my bedside table. It looked eerily similar to Mr. Miller, except its mouth was stretched wide open in a silent scream. I called the police, but when they arrived, the Millers acted completely normal. They denied hosting any gatherings and insisted they hadn't left their property all night. The officers dismissed my concerns, chalking it up to stress or paranoia. But I knew better. Whatever the Millers were doing, it wasn't ordinary, and it wasn't safe. To this day, I don't know what the Millers wanted, or why they chose me to witness their rituals. All I know is, I'll never feel safe in that house again. Whenever I pass their property now, I see those same symbols etched into the sidewalk, the fence, even the bark of nearby trees. And sometimes, late at night, I hear their chanting drifting through the air, pulling me closer, whether I want to go or not.